Hey everybody, welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
Dean, we recently did some air travels.
Yes.
To go to VARTech and
Traveled
back.
to VARTech, yep.
My first time traveling, actually not, I take it back. It hadn't been too long, but at least for anything business related.
Yes.
Air travel is a little bit of a nightmare sometimes.
Sometimes, absolutely. I mean, did you see the lines?
Yes.
Have you seen? Yes.
There was a huge security line. It wasn't like, took forever, but just a long line. Flights are cramped.
Flights are packed.
Prices are not
Through
great.
the roof. Yeah. Where are you going? Yeah. Well,
if there's one thing I do still enjoy about the airline experience, it's that there's a lot of them have self-service.
Oh,
so
this is so true.
When you check in, check a bag, you can do all that stuff at a kiosk. You don't have to
way
wait
more
a
efficient.
Huge long line.
I walk
for that
up,
part
I print my
least.
little thing, boom, done.
Yep, go give
Drop
it to
off the
somebody.
bag.
You're done. And,
Love it.
And then you go stand in the
Then you go
lines.
stand in line.
Right. But at least that part. Line free.
We got the bag figured out.
Much shorter and simpler, yes. We'll work on the other stuff.
Right.
Somehow self-service security, I don't think that's really going to work. So, we'll figure something else out.
Right.
Well, we're talking about self-service in general today.
Yes.
And kind of the overall progression of it. We've got Luke Wilwerding back on with us from ELO.
Luke's awesome.
He's going to help us dive a little bit into the history of self-service, kind of where we came from.
Why we're here.
Why we're here now,
All
where
right.
we're going with it. We're going to address some of the concerns people still have about self-service and self-checkout. I there's an interesting article I came across that kind of acts as if self-checkout is something that nobody really wants, which I strongly debate against.
I don't agree with the article, but anyway, we'll get
exactly.
into that.
We're going to talk. So we're going to talk about where we are, why we're here, who wants it, why they want it.
Yep.
Luke's got some interesting kind of philosophies behind that to share, I think. I want to talk a little bit about form factor, what's next, and of course where ELO fits into this whole thing.
Yeah,
so,
sounds like a good one.
there we go. We can't solve air travel, but we can at least explain how self-service works and why you should be out there selling it.
Yeah, there you go. Well, fair enough.
All that plus our usual value to the VAR and what's TEConnecting with us. It's time to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
All right, as I mentioned, our guest today, third time on the show, which I don't know if we've had any other guest outside of Cordy on.
Right.
More
we
than
need to come up
twice.
with that green blazer or something.
We do,
right?
something like that, yeah. It would probably need to be blue. Since,
Blue,
we're
blue blazer.
BlueStar.
Why do I go? Yeah, green. Yeah.
Anyway, Luke Wilwerding is the VP of North American Sales for ELO. Luke, welcome back to the show. We're glad to have you back. What have you been up to the last 6-8 months or so since the last time we had you on?
Glad to be back. ELO's just been working away, man. We're out there making a difference. So we're having a good time, keeping busy.
There we go. Well,
It's been hard at work.
Yeah, we appreciate having you at VARTech as always. You guys are always out there.
Yeah,
good
no
presence.
doubt. Awesome presence.
Saw the cool ELO shirts.
Very creative.
You guys did the bar thing, right?
Yeah, they did the bar thing.
Like had a little bar set up. Yeah, I see our producer Mark is showing off his. He's got his.
He's got his ELO shirt
on
on today. As a matter of fact, there you go. Yeah.
So always appreciate the support there. But hey, let's get into this topic. Let's talk about self-service because you sent over some really interesting talking points here of things you wanted to get into. And the reason why I brought up the airline thing is that was in particular something you mentioned that that the airlines really were one of the earliest industries to really get on board with this idea of self-service.
For sure.
Which again, thinking about all the ways that airlines don't seem to be very advanced to where they should be. It's surprising that they were on board with this before anything else.
Yeah.
So let's take us back to the 90s when that industry or any other industries that decided to hey, let's try out self-service and see where it takes us. What were they looking at? What were they seeing then? And what's happened since then? Or at least, for them, what's happened since then?
Well, I'd start with it's identifying a practical need and creating a solution. And when you looked at checking in at an airport check-in counter, every one of those transactions took 3 to 6 minutes. And so when you had a plane, you're trying to load 100, 200 passengers, you could kind of calculate to say, wow, we've got to think of something different. People are going to continue to have to wait in lines, or I need to have quite a few different folks at the gates checking people in. And so self-service at this touch point was really a natural piece. What I like, though, and why I talk about the airlines so much is that it wasn't just the mechanical aspect of people going in and trying to figure it out and using these. Back in the 90s, the gate agents, the people checking in, they dropped to, there's 3 or 4 of them. There used to be 10. And so when they started reducing those headcounts, they drove people to the kiosk. You could only use the kiosk for the most part, but they still considered the human factor. And I want to talk a lot about the human factor today, but there was still that ambassador, that person, that smiley face that came out. They helped you understand how to use the technology. It wasn't just, here's self-service. It's for you, the self person, to go figure it out. The airlines had these ambassadors that made it easy, made it comfortable, and brought a human factor, which is so important. But I like to go back to this practical need, create a solution. ATMs were some of the first kiosks ever in the world. And those kiosks were so practical because banks were only open, let's call it 9 to 5. And you wanted to get your money out when the banks were closed. Everyone wanted a couple bucks at night, let's say. So the ATMs became a natural progression to that practical need. And I think we're seeing more and more of that in today's world, especially with changing preferences.
And think about the 90s. If we could just go, for those of us that lived through the 90s, there were no smartphones. Not everybody had a touchscreen in their pocket. Yep. So the headwinds that
you couldn't do a lot on your computer back then, if you even had one.
Well,
not
laptop.
In the 90s.
I mean,
exactly.
There was no if you had a laptop, dude, it was pretty chunky and it didn't do a lot and stuff like that. So to Luke's point, I mean, everything that he was talking about there. But when you think about the atmosphere back then, I mean, there were a lot of headwinds in society and just adapting. And what are you trying to do? Wait, what is this? And so I like that we're going to get into the human factor. But yeah, I mean, it was a different world back in the 90s. People, I mean, just the touchscreen alone, I don't know. I'm sure there's video out there of people like walking up to a kiosk or like a touchscreen, like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this thing? What do you thus the need for the assistance, right, Luke? Right. I mean, even to this day, although I will say that I'm noticing less and less of the gate agents, helping people, because now we all kind of get it, or at least most of us get it, unless there's like a huge line or something like that. That there's the need for that. But anyway, 90s were different time.
Yeah, they very much so were. But I do love to I love to see industries that think about this stuff ahead of time. And again, like the airline industry fascinates me because I joked about, it's not one you usually associate with, excessive innovation when it comes to customer service and, and making things smoother and easier. We tend to complain more often than not about it. But yeah, to that point though, there was a need there. ATMs, another perfect example of, as you mentioned right up front, Luke, there's a need, and let's figure out a solution for it. Which, what do we always talk about on this show? That's the entirety of our channel and the existence of what we think our resellers should be doing is find needs and create a solution for them.
Innovate. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Be innovative. And there were some perfect examples. There were some, I assume, retailers or solution providers way back when that had some really smart ideas when those companies came calling and asking for help with something. So, well, then let's
guys, let's fast forward a little bit on the airline angle and then maybe move on. But think of through COVID, you had fewer travelers, but you have huge terminals. And so how do you staff personnel for the size of the terminals at reduced traveler rates? Guess what? Kiosks picked up the slack. Through that automation, they're able now to staff appropriately through these terminals. They even have airport check-in kiosks off-site. So even before you get to the terminal, you're in the parking garage, you can get your boarding pass, let's say. But there's been so much innovation in so many different ways over the years that they've evolved. Now you can check your bags through automation and other ways, again, through practical need, and people have adopted to it. So again, I love the example of what's occurred in the airline world.
Well, then let's get into the decades since. And I hate to say decades. We talk about the 90s, and we all probably are like, that wasn't that long ago, right? No, it's we're going on 30 years, since the start of the 90s.
Way to go, John.
Yeah, sorry. Don't mean to bring it down here, but we're getting old. But so outside of some of those specific industries, adoption of self-service was still kind of slow in a lot of ways. Again, especially retail, hospitality. I don't feel like we saw that really start ramping up a lot until maybe the last decade or so. And even then, there was a lot of hesitance. People still weren't using it the way they should have been. I always felt like when I would go into a place that had self-service kiosk, I was the lone guy who was doing it.
Oh, really?
Everyone else is up there standing in line. I'm like, all right, that's fine by me. I'll go do my thing. Yeah. But obviously the pandemic changed a lot, and we all became a little more embracive of this technology, whether we wanted to, for some folks, whether they wanted to or not. It was just, it was there. So let's talk about that. Let's, talk about where we are now. Why do you think there was hesitation before the pandemic, before we were kind of forced to do this, and it was essentially just kind of thrust on everybody? What's been that, what slowed things down so much in that time between?
Well, a lot of it is the desire for convenience. People, and again, I look at generational change. People don't have the same amount of patience they had in the past. And so you also have increased labor costs. You have all these various factors that are playing into this. So for a retailer, let's say self-order in hospitality, but this idea of self and doing it yourself is being more and more adopted because people like the convenience. They like the idea that maybe I can do it faster. I don't have to wait in line. I'm a little more reclusive after COVID, let's say. And I don't want to deal with anybody. I just want to check out and go along my way. But a lot of this is, I think there's a change in preferences, as well as, again, increased labor costs. So how many lanes do you have open at any given time? And this desire for convenience. I don't want to wait in line. I'm happy checking it out myself. I would say that years ago, we used to buy huge shopping carts of food. I think preferences have changed a bit, let's say in the grocery world, where people are checking out with 5-10 items more frequently, sort of the grab and go type mentality. Lanes are still open for heavy traffic, but again, it's those preferences. And I think attention spans. People have, if you've surveyed folks, and they would probably have a dissatisfied experience if they had to wait in line. Years ago, if they waited in line for 2-3 minutes, they might have been fine. Nowadays, they wait in line for 20-30 seconds. They're like, oh, this is horrible. And so I think these preferences are starting to change. But I also believe that there's this human factor. I recently checked out at, let's just say, a DIY. And I went twice that day. I forgot a couple things. And the first time I went through, I checked myself out. Smooth as could be, simple process, very fine-tuned. The second time, the guy, the person there who's always kind of standing there watching over, making sure things are going well, they checked me out. They said, oh, yeah, I got this. And they started scanning everything, and away they went. So was it self-checkout? Was it assisted checkout? I think you're starting to see this blend now that provides better service, better convenience. And I go back to this human factor that retail hospitality is really figuring out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, when you look at the decades that have happened since, if you go back to the early 2000s, you got the scary new tech issue, right? Oh no, what is this? What is this new technology that you're trying to implement? And that had real world implications, like, for example, unions. If you're getting into grocery, I mean, Kroger labor unions, one of the bigger ones out there, and I'm sure they weren't too happy about you're replacing our cashiers with these. So it had some practical implications like that, right? I mean, anytime innovative technology comes into the space, whatever the drivers are, whether it's the changing preference, I completely agree with Luke. Societal adoption, that has taken a little bit of a time to bear here over the last couple of decades. But you got to also think of those other, headwinds that were being faced by the industry, such things as replacing of union or of labor. I mean, that's a real world issue, right? And we face that in other innovations.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, we talk about like supply chain, manufacturing,
automation,
anywhere
robotics.
Anywhere where you're introducing some sort of automation, something that's replacing labor in some way. There's always that terror of or this means we're going to take away everybody's jobs and replace them with the robots. In reality, you end up reallocating. Like Kroger, for instance. If I go to my local Kroger now, yes, there are less checkout lanes open than before. There's more self-service options
a ton of
than before.
Right.
But there's also, if I'm actually going up and down the aisles, and the rare times I'm in the store anymore, there's also a bunch of people out there going around doing the pickup, collecting all the items, putting all those orders together. Those people did not have that job before. There wasn't someone who was going around personally, literally shopping for folks back then. That's someone who probably would have normally been at the checkout register that is now out there doing another job. Their job didn't get replaced. Their job just got changed in some way. And I think, that's obviously like the smart attitude to have about this stuff. But yes, there's always that terror of, oh no, what's going to happen?
Absolutely.
Luke, when you were sending over some notes about, this whole concept of like adoption of self, there's a couple really interesting stats you threw out here about from an ACA study called Achieving Customer Amazement that talked about like Gen Z millennials, their attitude towards, self-service and how they want to get stuff accomplished. And you mentioned that there was a part of the survey. So the survey also delved into a current self-service usage finding that 71% of respondents use self-service tools. When asked more specifically, when you have a problem or issue with a company or brand, which solution do you prefer to help solve your problem? 49% of Gen Z and 41% of millennials said they would rather use a digital self-service option rather than make a call or talk to a live customer agent.
That's interesting.
Now, I know I'm a middle-aged Gen Xer at this point, but I'm all on board with them on this.
Oh, yeah?
I am that guy who I will look for a chat option, an email option, anything I can do to not have to get on a phone and dial someone up and have to
even
have a
in store.
Well, this is more of like, self-service in general.
Oh,
I think,
okay, got it.
Self-service options,
Yeah.
but that lends itself to why when people go out at places, again, they want that idea of self-service.
Yep.
I remember when I used to shop at Meijer pretty regularly. That was like my local store for a long time. Meijer was way on board with a lot of the self-service stuff before Kroger and a lot of other local stores really did. What I found fascinating is they even introduced, which not many stores still really do this, and I don't know how practical it was, but they introduced self-service like if you had a full cart even.
Oh.
So they had like you go to a self-service lane, and they've even got like the whole right. The red, the whole lane out there that you put your groceries on, it rolls down to the end. You had to go down and bag them up yourself.
Right.
It was as absolute self-service as it gets for even if you had an entire cart, not just to pick up a few items.
Gotcha.
I love that. I don't know why. I was doing all the work for myself. It wasn't getting paid for it. But I enjoyed that for some reason. I guess I'm weird that way. But that was that. So that very much resonated with me. Is that idea? Luke, did you have any other thoughts on that?
Well, guys, think of the win-win. So we have increased labor costs. Finding employees is probably more difficult than ever in some cases. So what's the win to the business? The business says, well, hey, I can manage some of the labor costs. I can put people out on the floor. I can be more strategic now with my resources, that I'm not doing some of the simple mundane tasks that might be checking out or ordering or providing a ticket or something to that effect. And then the other side of that win is for the consumer. They get the benefit of better convenience, faster service. And again, there's still that human factor. There's likely someone there to help them if needed. But there's another stat from that article, just convenience wins business. 75% of customers would switch to a competing brand or company if they found out they were more convenient to do business with. 75%. So when you look at this idea of convenience, how can technology, self-checkout, self-service provide better convenience for both customers when businesses are also struggling to deal with employees' increased labor costs? It's a huge win-win.
That's the tipping point, to a certain degree, because you're right. It's the changing preferences. I mean, people want convenience. It's a little bit more about the experience now, right? And the experience of getting out, in the idea of, as it relates to hospitality and retail,
right? And you're taking that and matching it up with the businesses and where they're having issues right now. And those two things, you put them together and you introduce self-service. Hey, guess what? You're solving everyone's problems. You're making it easier on the people that want this kind of transactional or non-transactional, where you're not actually dealing with people, and you're also dealing with, hey, we've got staffing shortages, labor issues, and it seems like kind of a perfect blend at this point. Well, all right, Luke, go ahead.
Well, and I just throw out one other thing here. You look at the size of the market. So I think 2021, it was 22.3 billion. They're forecasting by 2026, this is going to be a $33 billion market. The numbers say that, guys, this thing is growing. It is the tipping point. Right? There's no slowing this train down. It's moving forward.
There you go. Exactly. Well, then let's start talking form factors here then, which, obviously, Elo's out there with the display part of things here, but obviously, the form factor of self-checkout has changed over the years. We talked about, the early days in the 90s of, the kiosks. We talked about early ATMs. ATMs have changed a lot. Once upon a time, it was all done with, a keyboard. You had a screen, but it was pretty much all keyboard driven. Maybe like old school, like, DOS, green screen type stuff. And now touch screen, now you can do a touch screen. You can have them like scan like your app. Like I can open up I don't do the ATM very often, but when I do, like I can open up the app and it creates a QR code that I literally just hold up and scan. I don't even have to touch the keypad anymore.
Can we go back to the old kiosk, going back to the airline industry? I don't know if you remember these, but they had the QWERTY keyboard, and then they had the little roller ball next. Do you remember any of those?
Oh,
so
wow.
The first time I walked up, I'm having flashbacks now. But the first time I walked, I'm like, am I playing Asteroids or whatever? Is this
Centipede,
an arcade? Yes, is this Centipede or whatever that has that ball? Zzz. Anyway, I didn't mean to digress there. But
because I don't think I wasn't flying that much in the early 90s. When I was a kid, we didn't go anywhere, so I didn't fly that often, so I never saw those. That's wow. I mean, it doesn't surprise me.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so then let's talk about like where we are now. Obviously, form factors changed quite a bit. Obviously, it's a little more intuitive, a lot more touch screen type stuff going on now. And maybe let's talk a little bit about what you think is next as far as form factor for kiosks and self-service.
Well, I'd say historically, and you can look at the airport check-in kiosks. They used to be very large, heavy metal, just big devices. Those form factors have slimmed down entirely. And this is, again, just market demand. as the market demands more and more of these, the costs have to come down. The form factors have to be more simplified. The proprietary nature of some of the first kiosks have to be reduced. So all these things are creating, I would call it, more standardization. And through that standardization, we're finding that adoption can increase significantly. So I would say that the form factors have become more modular. They're, because of the all-in-ones, the types of computers have shrunk in size, the pervasiveness, where you can place now kiosks it's incredible where you can find technology. And we'll talk briefly about where it's going, let's say, but some of the opportunity here is that fixed POS, as an example, isn't going away. In many cases, if you go to your grocery store, they didn't take away a bunch of lanes to add self-checkout. In many cases, they just added additional functionality. So they added the self-checkout lanes. I think when you look at retail, you're still going to have 2 to 4 fixed POSs in an average retailer. And that's, I'd say, the average today. They're going to add SCO. They'll add a self-checkout option, whether that's a convertible option from a fixed to self-checkout where they're flipping the screen, or will it be something where they'll have 2 different options? Though that's still to be determined. I think retail is the next frontier and where self-checkout will grow significantly. We've already seen from the self-order standpoint where more and more hospitality, fast casual, QSRs are moving to all self-order. And the form factors, again, are very simplified. They're easier to use from the software standpoint. And they might now only have 1 fixed register or 2. But this, again, is this evolution as we look at this. But the idea that self-checkout is going to take over the fixed POS for partners out there that sell fixed today, it's not going away. This is the add-on to that. And when you look at self-order, you're empowering those employees to both make a choice. Do I want to take them to a register? Do I want to use the self-checkout? And you're also adding this mobile factor to this. And so the mobile side of it is a checkout. It's still an assisted checkout, but it's a different form factor than your traditional self, let's say. So again, there's a lot of evolution that's occurring because of the ability to have a self-checkout option. And then how does that play into the fixed? How is it adapting and driving to the mobile for the line busting, for that point of product checkout? But again, it all comes together, let's say, in the next generation of in-store experience for customers.
Let's talk about the software real quick, because I think that has been an instrumental part in kind of transforming things over the years. Right. I mean, Elo does a fantastic job. Obviously, they have Elo View, but they also have a very tapped in disposition, if you will, at the ISV community. And because I think the software integration is obviously complicit to making sure that these solutions are much more advanced than they used to be, right? I mean, when we sit here and jokes, part of the joking is how bad the software was back then, right? I mean, but you know, your interfaces are much more streamlined. The GUIs are a lot better. The software development companies that are out there that are bleeding edge, I think, are really adding to the fact of where we are today and where we're going to be in the future, and their ability to kind of tap into things. Are you seeing that, Luke? You know, the software community, because I know you guys, Elo, does just such a fantastic job on that front, and it's a true initiative for you guys, right?
It truly is. I would say software and hardware, when those two groups work together, you have some of the best experiences. One of the big changes is that software is moving to the cloud. So when we look at the edge compute side, you're seeing more app-based, you're seeing more web-based type experiences, which are natural to the consumer. These used to be very fixed location, call it executable type applications that were difficult to update. They weren't really real time in many cases. There was some lag that occurred. Nowadays, where the holy grail is this unified shopping cart, where if I placed an order online, if I bought it in store, it doesn't matter. It's all the same cart. And they probably know who I am from a loyalty standpoint. And so when you start looking at all of this being brought together, the experience through that software is incredible. It's fast. It's seamless. It's like using my phone at home or a tablet, and it becomes very natural for people. Now, granted, if you go back to the late 90s and people are like, what's a phone? What's a tablet? You didn't have these things, right? So everything was done with a mouse. You joked about that trackball mouse, but those things were real because people had the understanding of the mouse. But now everyone has an understanding of a touchscreen. And so when you look at touch and you look at how the adoption of both web and app-based experiences have made their way into these the different self checkout, self order type options, let's say, it is incredible the differences. But it is, again, going back to saying the software companies working with the hardware companies to ensure that it is the best overall experience. It is very quick, seamless. And then we like to say that this ELO is modular by design. Not all experiences are the same. Some experiences you want a larger screen to see food. You want to see it clear and vivid. You might want to integrate different types of payment terminals and scanners depending on those use cases. Self-checkout, you might need an omnidirectional scanner. You might need cash management. But you want this modular capability in which ELO is very much known for. And then again, partnering with those software folks for the integration is a game changer.
Another thing that I think is going to drive it as we kind of in the software world, if you will, is the whole analytics. And so if we could just kind of digress a little bit off of the self-serve checkout, I think, and Luke, I'd love to hear your comment here, there's a self-service world that is happening within a retail or hospitality space that's beyond just the checkout experience. Meaning, I know ELO's involved in such things as virtual, not dressing rooms, but you know what I'm saying, where you can walk up and you can try on clothes virtually and things of that nature. Or maybe it's in aisle type kiosks where you get more information. The reason why this is going to have so much more traction is because the retail and hospitality space right now is getting highly scrutinized from an analytics standpoint, right? People want information. Retailers want information. They want to provide the vendors, the suppliers with the information. What is the heat map on my floor? Where are things being sold? Why did people pause in this area? What, did the information that we provide them make them do a further purchase down the line? How can we tie all that data together? It's more and more data intensive, right? So how can we facilitate? Well, you facilitate it through self-governing or self-selected types of processes. Now you can just garner more of that information, right? I mean, ELO's world is beyond just the checkout, right? Right? We're going, Luke, we're going like throughout the facility, right?
Very much so. And it goes back to identifying that practical need. Price checkers. Price checkers are required in some states based on the size and footprint of your store. We've been doing price checkers now for years. It's a requirement, but how do you turn that price checker now into a multi-information center? How do you turn it into a point of convenience for your customers where you could have endless aisle, where you can check a price, you could see coupons or promotions? In many cases, they're moving to virtual. How do I actually talk to an employee virtually? And this is, again, the next frontier where I really bring in that human factor to self-service. But just to make the point, we see returns kiosks, we see BOPUS or pickup kiosks, we see price checkers, we see wayfinding kiosks, we see point of product kiosks. As you look at technology sales or other types of more complex products, you want to have something that at point of product, you can share how this really works, the promotions and offers, the benefits that might come with that. And again, that's just on the retail side. You look at boats and automotive. You have now kiosks that serve content and information in terms of product info in those types of areas. You might have at a dealership, specialization, customization, personalization is such a key factor for some. And so how do I personalize my vehicle? The rims, the bumpers, the different things that I might choose or offer, how do I see that full catalog of opportunity in terms of an endless aisle? And then you get to the experiential, the dressing rooms. How do I try things on? How do I understand the different colors and options, fits, and capabilities of a garment or an experience? But ticketing kiosks, again, we talked about airports, but if I can go to buy my ticket for my ski lift pass or other, but ticketing's everywhere. But the idea of self-service is enormous. And again, I go back to just information. What if I need to talk to a plumber in an aisle at a DIY store, or I want to talk to an electrical expert? How do I get these people anywhere? And that's, again, how do I create experiences that I now involve the idea of that human factor through technology? And and it's public, so this isn't sharing private information, but United Airlines did a great job of connecting their gate agents with technology, where I can simply, yes, through mobile at my home or at the gate. I can do it through my phone, but I can also go to a kiosk and also talk to a gate agent live. And so again, these are just new emerging ways that through technology, we're better connecting people to people with the answers, let's say, to create that practical need, that convenience that's so desired.
I like the fact that you went down the kiosk angle, because I was going to bring that up too. Mm-hmm. I'm really fascinated at the kind of the light speed that you're starting to see kiosks like pickup towers and or self-serve kiosks, lockers. Right, there's lots of names for them, but in this self-serve world, like my daughter who's in college right now, she'll order stuff. There's a locker, there's an Amazon locker within feet of where she lives, and it just gets dropped off all the time. I mean, this is a kiosk, but you're going to start seeing those types of solutions. I'm starting to see them like literally everywhere, like warehouse applications, mechanics garages there where the tools are now put in these self-serve basically kiosks. Oh, I need this wrench, and you need a touch screen, and robotics will bring it right to you.
And you have a better option of tracking it too.
You have a better option. All the benefits that come into that kind of a world, and the other thing that we've talked about was as it relates to smart lockers. So you're starting to see. I'm glad you kind of tapped on that a little bit there, Luke. Right? I mean, that's one world. It kind of speaks to your whole changing of preferences, right? I mean, people. We want things on demand, kind of a thing, and they're getting very comfortable with interfacing with technology to serve that demand. I guess at the end of the road, right?
And I'd be doing Elo a disservice if I didn't say healthcare. When you look at check-in kiosks, when you look at cafeteria convenience, you look at, and throughout the healthcare environment, I'm not going to call some of the things we might do in surgical theaters and anesthesiology and other areas that are kiosks. But again, there's so many areas of convenience that are being created, let's say in the healthcare environment. Hospitals are large. How do you use wayfinding to help locate the digital experience, the floor, the patient locators, the check-ins? Guys, people want to know who's in your building. Being able to walk up to lobby technology to get a printed badge is another way of self-service, where I used to have to wait in line to talk to the security guard. Now there's a bank of areas where I can check in and identify who I am as I'm in that building and checking in, checking out, which goes to a little bit of the analytics side, which is a different spin on it, let's say. But across every single vertical, you will find different ways that self-service is impacting. Human resources, being able to go to the back of a house of a retail hospitality type business and be able to log into an HR experience or be able to understand your benefits through a larger display in the back. I might go through and see the reports from a previous day or some automation in terms of my factory and production. I might go to a kiosk to see what's occurring there at any given time, and I can dig down into the detailed reports rather than yesterday's printed material. There's so much going on in the world that enables self in the terms of getting information that you need to do your job better, or the convenience in retail hospitality, or getting basic services through medical or others. But again, the idea that a kiosk is so pervasive when you stop and you think about it.
Well, I like that we took this conversation into the broader world of self-service.
Yes.
There's much more beyond just retail, where we typically
checkout, right? Yeah.
That said, I do want to take us back to self-checkout for a moment, because I want to address some of the negativity I think that lives out there, and in particular, this interesting CNN business article I came across a couple months back, and
I've actually been CNN.
Well, that's true.
I'm just kidding.
I've been holding on to this one for a little while, because it really kind of stuck in my craw a little bit. Really, what are you trying to say here? So the title of it, which is exactly what caught my eye, is that nobody likes self-checkout. Here's why it's everywhere. And essentially, it is just a completely almost negative article about self-checkout and all the reasons why. Why are we even doing this? Right. Everyone hates this. It's all a nightmare for customers. It's a nightmare for the stores. Why do we do it? I'm like, come on, really? Here was a couple little things they shouted out. One, it says 67% of shoppers say they experienced failure in self-checkout. Now, I feel like it's one of those things all right, that could be a broad.
Well, actually, I believe that number's kind of low.
It probably is, because we've all experienced
in the history
something.
Of self-checkout. I mean, everybody's had a little glitch,
yeah,
a little
exactly.
hiccup.
I mean, we've all had times where you're checking out and I don't know, something goes wrong or something can't scan or
the assistant needs to come over.
Yeah, so someone comes over and helps you out. Whatever.
Right.
And then a really interesting little thing is this was an emeritus professor at the University of Leicester in the UK who studies retail losses, said if you had a retail store where 50% of transactions were through self-checkout, losses would be 77% higher.
Oh, man.
But
that's a pretty bold
and
claim.
that was a big part of, we'll get into some of that here too, but that was a big part of this article, was this idea suggesting that self-checkout leads to more loss.
More loss?
Leads to more
Really?
theft.
I
now,
see.
the theft thing, I just don't buy it. I understand, yes, there are people that will take advantage of it, that will scan one thing and drop 5 in their bag or something.
Although the systems, I think, are getting very sophisticated on that.
They're much
front.
smarter about that, exactly. But yes, people will do that. But I don't think just because someone's not directly watching you or doing it for you, it's not like we all just suddenly turn into thieves. We're not all just like, no one's paying attention.
No one's at the gate.
I'm going to buy one item and take 20. I just don't feel like that's really happening. But I wanted to kind of address some of these things, because these are going to be some pushback that our VARs are going to get from maybe some of their customers when they're trying to talk to them about implementing self-service checkout and the idea of more self-service options in their environment. So there's a few I wanted to get into. Let's start with one of the things the article mentions is that a lot of these companies say that installation's a headache and maintenance is a nightmare for these kind of devices. So let's address that first, Luke. What would you say if someone said, "Hey, I don't want to do this. It's going to be hard to get installed, and and who knows how often it's going to keep breaking down on me?" Which I frankly would say, well, your fixed POS probably has the same issues too. Right. But let's start with that. How would you address that particular pain point?
Well, reality is many stores weren't designed for self-service. So yes, you're trying to shift your checkout environments. You're trying to redo your millwork. You're making change. So for some, I guess if you're not designing for it early on, you're retrofitting depending on the time frame that they surveyed folks. There's things to think about, let's say. And that's where the partners can be such a value, is providing those consultative services to say how to implement that. It's still technology. So when you look at technology, to understand it, to manage it, it's going to have the same challenges and same benefits, let's say, as your point of sale that you have to manage and deal with. So I would say the notion that those are two big issues are, waking up in the morning can be an issue for some too. It's not. It's commonplace implementing technology, I would say. But I'd also make the comment, though, that in the way that ELO is managing these digital touch points through standardizations, through simplifying form factor, through the modularity, we are making it a lot easier. Because if you remember some of the self-checkouts of old, they were these huge bus-like devices that, to haul these things in took forklifts and other things. They were enormous. I think you look at self-checkout today, people can wheel them in on a dolly and set them in place. You got to have power, you got to have data. So there's things you got to think about ahead of time. But I would say that a lot of that is we're shifting away from some of the complexity that you might have seen even 2-3 years ago. And then again, the technology comment, it's tech. It's going to have its challenges, but the way that ELO is working through some of the Android options as well as standardization, again, I think we're simplifying that. But I want to go through this whole idea, and maybe it's the next question here, but that people aren't adopting it or they don't like it. I think there's some very vocal people around this, but you're seeing the adoption and the driving. It's not the evil business people that are like, oh my gosh, we got to implement this because we don't want to pay employees. Customers are demanding it. They want the consumer benefit. And you read off a stat earlier, but we are seeing what I would call generational change. Generationally, people want this level of convenience. Now, again, I go back to this human factor. So how do you get around the idea that, hey, this didn't scan properly? This doesn't have a barcode on it. You need that person there to help and assist. And certain retailers do it really well and others don't. And so you'll find winners and losers in this space. But I think people are figuring out that, you still need the employee factor. You still need someone to help you through these different transactions to make sure that the convenience benefit isn't overweighed by conflict because I couldn't get through that transaction simply and easily. And then I'll go to the shrinkage comment. The idea that theft happens all over stores, unfortunately. And when you look at self-checkout, there's now cameras, the way that the scanners operate. There's so many different things that are being implemented to try to catch this. But again, I still go back to this human factor. There are different ways that retailers are working through the shrinkage side of this. But again, the benefit from convenience, I think, outweighs some of the loss concerns.
Agreed.
Yeah,
and as I dove into this article, because, just to go back to the dissatisfaction where he was just at, again, the rationale back. And now they cited an article, a 2003 Nielsen survey.
A lot's changed
when
since
they were
then.
trying to, make the argument that the rationale was economics based and not focused on customer back then. From the get-go, customers detested them. But even back then, in this 2003 survey, 52% of shoppers considered self-checkout lanes to be okay. Now, wait a minute. Let's go back to 2003.
Right.
Again, not everybody had cell phones.
And the technology wasn't nearly as good.
World, right? But even then, 52% of shoppers were okay with it.
Right.
16% found them very frustrating. 32% called them great. So even back, this is like the initial implementation of this technology. I don't know, man. I thought it was really a stretch to reach back almost 20 years to get a survey of how people were interacting with self-service kiosks then. I mean, if you take to Luke's point, it's changed, right? There's a change in the societal adaptation of these technologies, and people want convenience. They're very comfortable with the technology, and this is where it's leading to.
And again, Luke mentioned this earlier too. We're still not talking about this idea that like rip out your entire fixed POS system and just install nothing but self-service. No one is ever saying that.
Right.
There are stores that might do that potentially and could potentially get away with it. Like Amazon tries to open up stores that are essentially all self-service. I get that some folks are going to do that. And I'm not saying that another 20, 30 years down the road, that might not be the case when, this technology gets that much better and we've got all like the machine vision stuff or whatever, they can just scan your cart and let you go and, pay and all and never have to interact with a human being.
Yeah.
Fine, we might get there. But I think right now about, Super Bowl weekend, holiday weekends, snowstorms coming, and everyone's running out to the stores. They're loading their carts up. There's no place in the world right now where you wouldn't want to have at least a few checkout lanes with actual physical human beings.
Zip right through.
Just for that person, because here's the thing. Even though I love self-checkout, I absolutely adore it. The times that I get frustrated with it is not usually because of the technology. It's because of the people that walk up to it that clearly have somehow seem like they have never seen this before in their existence. It's brand new to them.
They're not as savvy.
They take 20 minutes to check out 2 bananas,
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the stuff.
Quit hogging the self-checkout.
Right. Yeah. That's my frustration. Like, I'm not frustrated with it because the technology's not useful and awesome and works right. I'm frustrated because I'm always frustrated with people. You know?
Yeah. But that's a general theme of yours.
That's true. People are always the problem. So, I agree. This whole notion of like, no one wants this, everyone hates this.
Yeah.
I like I said, I saw this article and I thought, like, was this an old article I somehow came across? Was this like from even 4 years ago, pre-pandemic or something? And no, like someone's trying to put the take out there right now that no one wants to do this. And I just hard disagree, and I figured we would all hard disagree on that one.
Well, and at the end of the article, not to keep harping on it, but they do come around to the fact that it's here to stay. And they quote a former executive from Dollar General. It says it's an arms race. If everyone else is doing it, you look like an idiot if you don't have it. So once the cat's out of the bag, pretty much, it's difficult to not to do a type of thing. And while that's fine and all, I think, again, going back to what Luke said, it's really people, what people want, right? It's the convenience.
And we've had that discussion before, though. I think when we've talked about retail and self-checkout, probably at some point, that a lot of the times the people who do want this and do embrace it are some of the people that you want the most as your customers.
Oh, sure.
It's the folks that have disposable income.
That's
it's
right.
The folks that are more, comfortable with technology. It's younger generations that you want to make a customer for life. So if you're not doing the thing that makes them want to come back to your store and you're only saying, no, I'm not going to do this. I just want my solid customers that are now in their 50s, 60s, 70s and beyond that want nothing to do with technology. Well, guess what? They're not going to be around forever. And if you want to have staying power with the younger generations, you should be embracing this. Even if it's the smaller portion of your business right now, at some point, it's going to be the entire customer base that you have. And if you didn't embrace this early on and you didn't adopt it early on, it's not like they're going to stop doing it.
Right.
It's not like the younger generations, when they get into their midlife, and later, are suddenly going to go, nope, I don't like this technology anymore.
Yeah.
I want to go back to lines. No, of course not. Luke, did you have some final thoughts?
I'll just, any one of those folks that are saying, oh, I just don't like self-service and the idea of self-checkout, get behind someone who's doing a return in a lane and there's one lane open, or get behind someone who's got 75 items and they're working through it with a coupon for each item. You get behind some of these folks, and we know these things happen. And then you look over there and there's this kiosk saying, hey, I'm ready. And you've got one item to check out. That person's going to say, oh, I'm so happy they have self-checkout because I'm going to be through this in less than a minute through the self-checkout process. And so I go back to these people, oh, I'm not going to do their work for them. Blah, blah. This is just it's an outdated mindset. But when you look at the convenience factor and how retail, again, hospitality, all the folks that are adopting the idea of the kiosk and self-service, they're providing more convenience to their customers. And you're always going to run into these situations where, it wasn't perfect. That's going to happen. But when you get stuck behind someone who's, working with someone and they're having an experience, or they've got an absolute large quantity of product, and you just want the convenience factor, every single person's going to say, wow, I was so thankful they had self-checkout. It is the truth.
Yeah.
Great point.
For sure.
Because that one person, just the idea of one person having a better experience because of that. And then maybe that person comes back the next time and buys 10 times as much. You never know. Why would you want to turn off any single customer whatsoever?
That's right.
For any reason.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, this has been good stuff. Before we get into our usual value of the VAR segment, I do want to, as always, thank our TEConnect sponsors for the program, our TEConnect members, the folks that support the podcast. Thank you so much to ELO. You guys throw a lot of support behind us in this podcast. We appreciate you and appreciate you lending us folks like Luke to come on here and talk about this stuff.
Right.
As always, if you want to stay in touch with us, well, first of all, if you like the show, let us know.
Yep.
Believe it or not, one of the most important ways that you can support a podcast is simply telling them that you like it.
Yep. And doing a rating.
We were talking about this when we
rating.
were out and about at VARTech, how many people came by and you just said, hey, I like what you guys are doing.
Stuff. Yeah, right.
You know what? That's great. I love to hear that. But we don't get a chance to get out there and have someone tell us that stuff personally. So leave us rating and reviews. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button for this episode. Drop a comment. Just tell us, hey, what are your thoughts? Do you like self-checkout? Yay or nay? Just tell us what you think. And if it's nay, what are you doing in this business? If you whatever podcast platform you listen on, if there's an opportunity to rate and review, especially if you're on iTunes using the Apple Podcast, leave us a 5-star rating and review. We want to hear from you, know what you think about the show.
Or if they're looking to improve their wardrobe, they could, right? We have a solution
exactly.
there.
If you're looking for just one extra shirt in your wardrobe, maybe it's you're cleaning out after the summer and thinking, I need to get rid of some stuff that doesn't fit anymore. I need a fresh t-shirt, something comfy. All you have to do to get a fresh new TEConnect podcast t-shirt is to submit an idea to us on what you want to hear about on the show.
Bingo.
Very simple.
Just that easy.
There's a few ways you can do that. One, you can go to a link in our show notes, which has the a link to a little survey that you can take online quickly and just tell us, hey, what I want to hear about the show. You can also connect with us 2 different places. You can always find us on Twitter at TEConnectPod. You can email us TEConnect@BlueStarInc.com. All right, let's wrap things up here. Let's start with our value to the VAR.
Yeah.
And again, this is one of those topics where I feel like if you didn't get value out of this already, I don't know what to tell you, but we're going to let Luke talk a little bit more about how ELO provides some real value here. So how's ELO helping out with VARs that are trying to bring self-service specifically to the SMB world? Like the big dogs out there, they've probably got it covered already, or if they're not doing it, who knows what their problem is. But a lot of our VARs work in the SMB world where maybe they need to tackle some folks who just not sure if this is for them, if this is what they want. How is ELO going to come in and help that out?
Well, it does start with our core offerings. We create some of the most advanced, easy to use, modular products. And so whether you're a Windows, Linux, Android shop, depending if what type of payment you need, the size of screen, all those types of things, ELO brings it together through our modular by design approach. Our Wallaby stands are simple, cost-effective ways to start in self-service. And again, creating this ease of use type environment. But I also go back to the team of people I work with. We're highly passionate. We understand the touch point. We know the partners and players in the software world, and we can bring all of this together to help our VAR community be successful implementing self-service. And in many cases, if you're not working with the software partner within the customer you're trying to support, they oftentimes have an attachment for self-service that can be easily implemented. And most of them are already certified with ELO products. So I would just say that by reaching out to your ELO professional, someone to help you drive into this type of new offering if it is new for you. And then I think you'd be impressed with the breadth of our portfolio and how simple it is and easy it is for your customers to implement.
Bingo. What is the opportunity here, right? When you think about SMB, folks, there is opportunity there to implement these types of solutions. I know we were joking about bringing in forklifts and dropping off a huge kiosk, and that's where we were maybe 20 years ago. No, today, especially through the offerings that ELO provides, there is opportunity there, and it's all the way down to the SMB. You can implement solutions at a small boutique store if you want. These are options that are out there. And how wonderful once you see an opportunity to be able to leverage the types of relationships, resources. Luke, I'm going to comment again on ELO's ability to tap into the ISV community. I'm telling you, they've got vetted solutions. If you're looking for whatever it is in whatever world, and that's why our DNAs, meaning BlueStar's and ELO's DNAs, are so closely aligned, because we embrace that part of the community, right? So if you're looking for a solution that is specific to a dry cleaner or something, maybe you need a dry cleaner, a kiosk, right? That's one of your customers. We got a solution for you. We got the Wallaby. We got a POS system that can be, implement there. These are the types of things that can enable SMB types of businesses to drive and thrive and compete in this self-service world.
Agree.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give a quick call back to one of Luke's previous episodes with us about consultative selling.
Oh, right.
And it's exactly some of the stuff that you mentioned earlier on this episode, Luke, where you talked about, hey, maybe you have a good conversation with someone who's a little bit like, I don't know that I need self-service. And ask them a question, but like, hey, was there ever a time that someone was just killing minutes of time at the register because they were digging out coupons or trying to find their checkbook or was trying to make a return? Hey, people still do it, believe it or not. My mom's one of them. Like the folks that are out there, that are slowing down the process. I guarantee you, anyone who has ever worked at checkout has not one, probably a few dozen stories about someone who just slowed up the works, created a line, was a nightmare for everyone else waiting, that had a simple checkout and something easy to do. That right there, that kind of stuff, that when you start that consultative process and ask about, what about this? Have you ever encountered this? Do you have a lot of young customers? Have you ever had someone ask you about self-checkout? Any of that kind of stuff. And that's the kind of stuff where you start getting enough answers, you're going to compile your own case for yourself and for them about why this is a viable option. And it might be just as simple as like, hey, one self-service kiosk. That might be all you need. We're just simply making a way that if anyone wants to use this, there's
now they got that convenience.
A little bit of consultative selling can go a long way and a little bit of asking probing questions can go a long way to figuring this out.
Good stuff.
There's definite opportunity.
That's right.
And guys, I love that you focused on the SMB because that is the next frontier. As you mentioned, the large enterprise, they have the resources, they can figure that out. The small, medium business, though, oftentimes these stores and locations have one employee. When they get into the return, when they get into helping somebody, how can they keep that friction layer, that convenience high? And you can do that through self-service. And again, ELO has done this so many times for our customers. This is something where we know what we're doing. We know how to do it. We know the partners and software companies to make it work. So again, it's just starts with reaching out and we'll help you be successful.
There you go.
There you go, as always. All right, well, hey, let's wrap things up today with what's TEConnecting with you.
Shifting gears, yes.
This is our favorite segment. We get to talk about something in the world of science, tech, innovation, something that's got our attention, caught our eye, something we're interested in right now. Luke, I'll let you start. What's TEConnecting with you right now? I'm
going to go with two of them today.
All right.
The James Webb telescope. I'm just geeking out on the imagery for this thing. It is incredible.
It's amazing.
I just can't wait to see and hear, the young people today that now have access to this type of technology and what we'll find. It's just such a huge mystery. And then the other one was, we sent a satellite to hit an asteroid. So,
that was mine too. That's a good one. Yes.
Is that the DART thing or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah, I just kept it in the space. But the NASA DART Asteroid Impact Project is just such a cool thing to send something millions of miles away to run into an asteroid, change its trajectory. So I just thought both of those were really cool.
Now, have we determined, did this work or is that still?
Well, no. So that was my TEConnecting. You got my. So yeah, right. The small asteroid was called Dimorphos, and we spent $325 million to send basically,
which all things considered is not a lot for a space project,
right? It's a vending machine sized satellite. So you can just kind of picture what it is, right? And the asteroid itself that we smashed into is 525 feet wide. So not
massive.
It's like a football field, right? I mean, it's not, but it is unbelievable when you think about the science. It was 6.8 million miles away. And we hurled this thing going 14,000 miles an hour, and we hit something that's the size of a football field, 6.8 million miles away, all in the effort to nudge it. They just want to nudge it a little bit, right? And see if we can knock it off.
Change its trajectory a little,
just so that we could use that same equation maybe in future if we have another asteroid, a bigger, more impactful.
A world ender is coming.
Is coming our way. Yeah. Do we need to send a school bus after it? And is it actually going to work? But I was fascinated like you were, Luke. I mean, that one kind of captured everybody. And there was this big nothing better than watching NASA people really calm, quiet. Yeah. And then all of a sudden this roar. Like, yeah. It's like, what did they just do again? Oh, they smashed a vending machine into an asteroid 6.8 miles away. Million miles away.
Well, we can't get excited about moon landings and Mars landings at all necessarily right now. So whatever they can get excited about.
I also thought it was interesting. It was like the turducken satellite, because it also had a little satellite that popped out of it that videotaped the whole impact. I'm like, that's just awesome.
How geeky is that? I mean, how cool would it be to work on that? But talk about having patience in our impatient world. If you work at NASA, I mean, that was probably like a 5-year project, right? And you had no idea if it was going to work.
That's why they go nuts when that stuff works, because they've been pent up and they've been filled with nerves and anxiety for years probably to get to that single point.
So to your question, though, I don't think we're going to know for a while.
Okay.
It could be years until
because
we see
it's such a minuscule.
Yes. We were literally hoping to just nudge it a little bit so that if it were coming after us, for example, I mean, in space terms, if you can nudge something that it's going to miss by 100,000 miles, well,
a millimeter today, could be hundreds of thousands or millions of miles.
So more information to come, but really cool.
I was curious. I know I read about that and heard, because it was just last week, I think, that they did that, and I figured we probably don't have any real data yet, but I'll be interested. Be interested to hear that. And I will say also the James Webb thing. I'm the same as you, Luke. Every time I see an article pop up, like new images for the James Webb Telescope, I'm like, that's it.
All over it.
I'm like, whatever I'm doing, just stop. I'm going to open this up. I'm going to go look through these images and just be in awe.
Yeah.
But to your point, yes, like the future generations and like just kids now, like I think about my son when he gets into school and he starts learning a little bit about space and science and astronomy. And granted, I've even shown him some of these pictures now. And I know like right now he just doesn't, he thinks of like a planet as just like a place where like the Avengers go or, Star Wars, it's all just, theoretical to him. But when he starts understanding how big the universe is, and when I can explain to him, like, this imagery you're seeing is so beyond anything we've ever remotely seen in our entire lifetime. Like, I'm amazed by what we're seeing out there. It's one of the most underrated, amazing space projects we've ever undertaken is our ability to just have such clear imagery of what's happening in the universe right now.
It is cool. No doubt about it. Yeah.
So, all right, I'll wrap things up here.
With you? Yeah.
I frequently talk about the idea of AI and robots and end of the world scenarios.
Oh, yes, of course.
Right. I treat it fairly jokingly. Well, I will say, no, we're not enough. Today, actually, I have some positive news on this front. So there's an interesting article I came across about a couple gentlemen in the field of philosophy who co-wrote a book together, basically suggesting that we shouldn't be this worried about this. And the name of the book is called Why Machines Will Never Rule the World: Artificial Intelligence Without Fear. And essentially, they use like fundamental concepts of philosophy to talk about how AI is really never going to get where it could potentially like step away from the boundaries we create for it and learn faster than us and better than us and take over the world. And they give some reasoning behind this. So they're saying, hey, AI is obviously advancing, but we're still nowhere near human capacity of what the human brain can handle and
this
do
is
and
true.
manage.
Yeah.
And also that the reason why AI probably can't get to that point is because most of what AI can do is based on our inputs.
Right.
So unless we figured out someone maliciously intended and figured out a way to program AI to intentionally become better than us and overthrow us. And again, even if they could try, someone would willingly try to do that, could they even do it? And their suggestion is no, probably not. So I want to give a couple quick quotes that they had from this article and from their book that really kind of resonated with me of why we shouldn't be all that concerned about this. One of them noted that they compare the idea of artificial intelligence going beyond general human intelligence with the idea that this rests on fundamental mathematical impossibilities that are analogous in physics to the impossibility of building a perpetual motion machine.
All right.
AI that would match the general intelligence of humans is impossible because of the mathematical limits on what can be modeled and is computable. And then they note also a little bit later, like in a direct quote from one of the authors, he says, to overcome these barriers would require a revolution in mathematics that would be of greater significance than the invention of the calculus by Newton and Leibniz more than 350 years ago. We're not holding our breath.
I see. Huh.
So
that's an interesting take.
I thought so too. I was like, all right, like I like that we're, suggesting that this isn't, going to be too out of control. They also mentioned technology skeptics do not, of course, have a perfect record. They've been wrong in regard to breakthroughs ranging from spaceflight to nanotech. But these gentlemen say their arguments are based on mathematical implications of the theory of complex systems. For mathematical reasons, AI cannot mimic the way the human brain functions. In fact, the authors say that it's impossible to engineer a machine that would rival the cognitive performance of a crow.
Whoa.
So
okay.
If we're not able to get past crow level, we probably don't have to worry too much about getting to human level. So I thought that was a little bit of a positive.
Okay. All right.
For any of us that worry.
What's the name of the book again? I might have to read some of this stuff or the article or there was.
Of course, as
book,
always,
right?
I'll link
Put
the
it
article in the show notes.
The
name of the book is Why Machines Will Never Rule the World: Artificial Intelligence Without Fear.
And clearly, they've never seen Terminator 2 and Cyberdyne.
They literally even mentioned Terminator in this article. Like, the idea that happening is just highly unlikely that we will get to that point. So I thought it was a very, very good article. I thought it was a very interesting take on AI and why we shouldn't be so concerned about it taking over.
There's hope.
Despite, as they mentioned in the article, what Elon Musk said, where it would be beyond us in 5 years.
5 years.
Or that was in 2020, he said that. So.
Okay. We'll see who's
All right. That does it for us today. Luke Wilwerding from Elo, thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Always a good time.
Hey, until next time, don't worry so much about AI. There's plenty of other problems you can stress and worry about.
Plenty of other problems. There you go.
Find some beautiful images to look at from space. And think about what we need to throw at an asteroid next. Yeah. Maybe it's one of those old kiosks.
Yes.
Those old giant self-service.
Yeah, just lob them up there.
Some of those are still laying around in a warehouse. We can lob those out at the next asteroid.
There you go.
And as always, folks, please stay connected. TEConnect Podcast is brought to you by Elo. All right, Dean, we talked about self-service today.
Did.
Let's talk about one product with thousands of uses.
That's a big claim.
That's a very big claim.
Let's dive in.
The possibilities are endless with Elo's iSeries 4, from self-order and self-checkout to order pickup and virtual assistants. Pair the iSeries with a variety of stands to create your perfect kiosk. Talked about kiosks today.
Bingo.
Audio and video applications.
Check.
No problem. The iSeries offers built-in digital microphones and an 8-megapixel camera. iSeries also lets retailers build engaging experiences, educate buyers, create brand awareness, and drive purchases in-store with an easy-to-use interactive platform that can adapt as needs change. With a built-in I/O hub, USB-C connectivity, and optional customer-facing display, you can easily convert your favorite iSeries into a powerful, industrial-designed POS system. Your favorite
modularity.
iSeries.
There you go.
There's that modularity.
Hey, did we just talk about all this stuff? They're nailing it.
Seriously, like they're backing it up. Like they're not just spouting off claims about self-service.
They got the product. There it is.
So to learn more about the iSeries and select your perfect display for your customers' needs, contact your BlueStar Elo representative. And hey, let's move on a little bit further here. Let's get a little further into what Elo can do with their iSeries display and with self-service. So if you're thinking about versatility, again, that modularity. Elo's TEConnect offers a wider assortment of peripheral options for your digital displays.
It does.
Whether for endless aisle, self-order again, collaboration, you can seamlessly attach up to 4 peripherals to the touchscreen edge with flexibility to add, remove, or change later as needed. All right, let's talk about some of the peripherals you can add.
All right.
Temperature sensors.
You're going to need it.
Status lights.
Yep.
3D or conference cameras.
Of course.
Barcode scanners.
Yeah, duh.
Card readers.
Yes.
Collaboration tools.
All right.
Payment cradles.
Yeah.
All this stuff. If you can't find peripherals to meet any customer needs, you just aren't trying at this point.
There it is.
So there you go. iSeries 4, TEConnect. To learn more about all this stuff, check out the links in the show notes or contact your BlueStar account manager.